Many of us in this room know someone in special education, whether that be a peer, a student, a friend, or a child. However, what I bet you didn't know is that special education students are 2 times more likely to develop depression, 18% more likely to develop anxiety, and 30% more likely to deal with chronic loneliness, as well as so many more negative psycho-emotional conditions. But why is that? Hi, my name is Emily Simcock, and as a part of the Intern Mentor program here at Mount Hebron High School, I'm interning at Rockburn Elementary School with Mr. Charles Stadelmeyer. Mr. S is a special educator in the 5th grade department, and he and I work with 5th grade special education students regularly. As a part of my internship, obviously I'm working with special education students, but I'm also working with general ed students. I'm working with special education teachers. I'm working with the parents of special education students, and I'm working with classroom teachers. I am obviously assisting special education students in their learning, but I'm also getting to know them personally and observing their interactions and experiences in school, in both the classroom and in their natural kind of peer environments. And what I've learned from that is that special education is hard. Obviously, these students have behavioral issues and they have learning disabilities, but it's hard for a lot of other reasons too. It's difficult for them to connect with their peers. They have a lot of anxiety over their tests and assignments. They don't feel capable or confident in most academic situations, and they find a lack of understanding from peers, teachers, and classmates. So, from this, I developed the research question: how does involvement in special education programs psychologically and emotionally impact students with learning disabilities? And I developed the hypothesis that students in special education programs are more likely than general ed students to develop depression, anxiety, and loneliness. In this presentation, I'm going to go over a review of literature that covers a lot of the specific reasons why students in special education may be developing negative mental health conditions. Then I'll go into my personal research, which goes into the frequency of these conditions in my internship. And then lastly, I will wrap it up with a conclusion and talk a little bit about the product that I developed from this research. So the first major reason within special education as to why these students are developing negative mental health conditions is social isolation. Many IEPs include pull-out seminars. These usually happen in a separate classroom from the general ed classroom and can be in groups with other special education students or one-on-one. And there's also instructional or behavioral support in the classroom for some students, which entails a special educator or paraeducator sitting directly beside the student while they're in class to help them right there in the room. These modifications are intended to help students in school, and in many ways they do. However, pullouts can act as a major physical barrier to peer interaction, as they quite literally take a student away from the place where they may be able to be talking with peers and making friends. There's also the issue of constant support from a special educator in those, instructional behavioral support in the classroom scenarios, as students are less likely to interact with a peer who has an adult sitting right next to them. It is a lot harder to be able to connect with younger students when, again, there's an adult right next to you. The second issue is bullying. Bullying is 2 times more likely for students in special education programs. Reasons for this include looking different through the use of supports and modifications. In one of the interviews I conducted, a teacher told me that sometimes she hands students modified copies of assignments for special ed students, and she's seen students be like, oh, why you get that? Oh, like, I don't know, acting like jerks, she said. So that's definitely a big deal. And then there's also the issue of pre-existing stigmas against special education. Many students and adults feel that they are above these students in some way because they're in special education, which is not right, but leads to bullying. One study showed that 20% of students hold negative attitudes against those in special education, which directly correlated with their likelihood of bullying these students. Lastly, there's teacher attitudes. Many teachers are frustrated and exhausted because of budget cuts to special education programs and insufficient staffing, which is specific to Howard County, as this is a major problem in the county right now. There's also the issue of providing specialized instruction and modifications to fulfill the requirements of every IEP. This is specific to classroom teachers who have to teach the given curriculum to all of their students, but also have several special education students at a time who need the curriculum modified in different ways, which can be a big challenge. At the end of the day, these attitudes often are leading to frustration and resentment with special education programs and teachers that rubs off on students and leaves them feeling less than because they might feel like that frustration is with them. So for my personal research, I wanted to focus more on the prevalence of these mental health conditions within my internship. So I decided to do an 8-month observational study at Rockburn with 7 of the 5th grade special education students that I work with. I observed them for behaviors indicating depression, anxiety, or loneliness on charts, which I will show in a second. And I also interviewed teachers at the school who could corroborate some of the observations that I made. This is an example of some of the results I got, and again, those charts that I was looking at. I looked for the prevalence of depression indicators, anxiety indicators, loneliness indicators, and other potential negative mental health indicators, and I listed the specific indicators, and I also got interview quotes corroborating these observations from the teachers. From these charts, I was able to conclude that 4 out of 7 students experienced frequent depression symptoms. These specifically included low mood points and outbursts or shutting down during special education specific work, such as record keeping, where they had to read a passage and be timed. They really didn't like those. 6 out of 7 students commonly avoided tasks in some way, indicating anxiety. Something that is not listed here specifically is that every student that I observed showed some frequency of anxiety. It could be a little or it could be a lot, but no student was free of anxiety in the school setting. Lastly, 3 out of 7 students hardly interacted with peers throughout the day, indicating severe loneliness. 2 out of these 3 students I did not see interact with peers hardly ever at all throughout my 8-month observational period. So the important takeaways from this: there is likely to be a relationship between special education and poor mental health in these participating students. Both the interviewed teachers and the review of literature I showed previously support this idea. However, more research is needed to flesh out this thesis completely. Observational studies can only prove correlation, not causation. So to say that special education is causing these negative mental health conditions from this study alone, you can't make that conclusion. So an experimental study where we are also using a larger sample size and more variation in students could definitely help support this thesis more. So I want to read a quote from a special education student. It says that special education has a special way to make you feel dumb, not good enough, and that everything you do is wrong. I feel like this presentation has definitely felt kind of more negative, but that's not the takeaway that I want people to take, because I think there is more to this research than just negative and darkness. So the rest of this quote says that it can be better. There is clearly a problem in special education. Our students want to be supported and they deserve this support, but they might not be getting it in every way that they can. So it's important that we take the observations that we made today and this new knowledge, and we work to make a change to this program so that they can be entirely beneficial to these students. So I talk a little bit more about this in my product, which is a video PSA on YouTube that covers the mental health of special education students and why their mental health may be negatively impacted, much like what I went over in this presentation. But I also talked a lot about how we as peers and teachers and students and parents can make a change to make special education a more positive experience. I've definitely learned through my internship that it is so important, and it is such a wonderful program. But again, we can make it so much better. Thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions.